Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest introduced to you now. Anna Fruehling is a recovery sugar, food, and drug addict with over 35 years clean. Wow. When she realized that sugar acts as the gateway drug, priming the brain for all other addictions, a light bulb went off in her head. Anna now spends her time and energy helping others recover fully from all the outlets of the deadly disease of addiction. Anna is now a certified food addiction counselor and sugar certified and licensed through former podcast guest Bitten Johnson, who we hosted back on episode 477 of our show. Anna is the author of An Altered Spirit, The 12 Steps and Ebenezer Scrooge, where all proceeds from her book sales benefit nonprofit organizations like First Step Home. As co-founder of SUGARx Global, Anna helped develop a system based on their CARE acronym, which stands for Connection, Action Steps, Recovery Protection, and Education, as a foundation for addicts to grow, recover, and transform. SUGARx Global features multiple weekly village recovery gatherings, podcasts on timely subjects, guest speakers, experts in the field, as well as Q&A forums and lots of practical information. It is Anna's purpose and her privilege to help others recover from addiction of all kinds. Anna Fruehling, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's so great to host you. Getting to know your work has been really, really fun. It's so awesome doing this podcasting journey. I've gotten to meet so many wonderful people. It was about a year ago, I got to meet the amazing Tia Reed, if you know her. She's
Yes.
just the kindest, most amazing human ever. The first person ever at a conference that came up to me and was like, "Oh, can I get a picture?" And I'm like, "I'm sorry, I'm in the way." And she's like, "No, I want a picture of you." I was like, "Why?" She's wonderful. She introduced me to Judy. We interviewed Judy Wolf a few weeks ago. She is awesome. Great to get to know her. She's got a wonderful message. We actually, in the time since recording, we started doing some virtual strength training together. So I've been able to spend even more time with her. I've gotten to know her son, who we're going to interview on the show, and through them, got to interview you as well. So it's really wonderful to see like the thread of people that I get to meet by doing this. Really fun.
Well, I think that's awesome. You're working on strength training with Judy. I'm thrilled for her because I think that so much goes into mental health and wellness, and you can't shut down one system for another, right? Everything has to be taken care of holistically. So I was thrilled to hear that, and thank you so much for doing that for her. That's just amazing.
She asks great questions. She's really like eager to learn. So it's been really, really fun. And as I've been listening to your content, we've done lots of episodes about, sugar addiction, food addiction, and we've covered it from lots of different angles, but there's something a little bit different in the way that you kind of talk about it. And hopefully this isn't too big of a deviation, but I want to compare it to something. And recently, at the time of recording, we just passed the anniversary of a certain hockey game that happened in February of 1980. Most people will not know what the hell I'm talking about until I say that that was the Miracle on Ice, a game known as the United States and USSR. For the anniversary, I watched the movie, which I absolutely love, Disney movie called Miracle. And as the announcer setting up the game, he's kind of explaining that like this is a hockey game. Most of you watching probably don't even know what the lines on the ice mean or what the dots mean. This is so much bigger than just a hockey game. And when I'm listening to you and talking about sugar addiction, I get a sense of like, yeah, we're going to talk about sugar addiction today. But my question for you is, why is addiction, and in particular food and sugar addiction, so much bigger than just that one thing?
Well, I think we have to go back to come forward, right? So we're designed to have a dopamine reward center that is driven, right? It is driven. It wants us to go and hunt and gather. It wants us to have sex and procreate. It wants us to do all these things. But we have a mismatch between our brain, which hasn't changed, right? That part of our brain has not changed, and our current environment. And so we're in the land of pretty shiny things, and at no time in man's entire history has a person been able to, I could literally never go outside. I do not have to leave my house to work, to buy clothes, to get anything I want on a dime, right? Just like that. In fact, right across the street, there's a home, and I see them with DoorDash every single night. I don't know if they've ever made a meal for their children.
Oh my
And I could
goodness.
cry, right? So we don't have meaningful purpose. And 88% of people in the United States are metabolically unhealthy. That means 12% of us are, and I would even question that because I believe in Dr. Kraft's model of hyperinsulinemia being like the cornerstone of all disease and the cornerstone of diabetes. And so I know that when I was a young woman, I was very thin, but I binge ate junk food and I would collapse. I remember dropping my purse one time and passing out to bend down to pick it up because of my hypoglycemia, which tells me I had hyperinsulinemia, which tells me I was already metabolically unhealthy. So I don't think you can tell by looking at someone what's going on. But when you're metabolically unhealthy, what that means is you're going to have a low energy brain. And so your brain wants to feel good. And so you're going to seek energy. And when you're eating the wrong kinds of energy, we have an abundance of energy, but we're not eating nutrients. And I think that changes the brain and it changes everything. It changes how you feel, it changes how you think. And there are a lot of addictive things out there, but just because there's so many addictive things, that doesn't make you an addict. What makes you an addict is when there's a change in the brain where maybe I have clients like this, for instance, and I know that Nancy won't mind me using her name, so I'm going to use it. Her name is Nancy, and she was sent to me by her obesity specialist. And she was sent to me because she had so much fat around her lungs, she couldn't breathe. And she was moving in the right direction, and her A1C had lowered, and her doctor had made the mistake of restricting her calories too much. She was eating pretty much in alignment with how I would want her to eat, but her calories were restricted too much. And what happened was her addiction started to morph. And she started to feel shame because she couldn't stick to the food plan. And so when you start to feel shame and you start to feel hunger and you start to feel all these things and you don't know what's happening, you don't know that your brain isn't getting the energy it needs. And this is why you're behaving this way. And so she started eating on the sly, keeping it from her doctor, keeping secrets, which breeds more shame until, her doctor, Sandra, reached out to me and said, help. And the first thing I did was give her more food. And I told her to eat pretty much ad lib. And addicts hate to hear that, right? People hate to hear that because they want the secret handshake. They want if you do X, Y, and Z, you're guaranteed these results. And the truth is, your body is smart. Your body is so damn brilliant, it's not even funny. Like, you cannot outsmart your body. It's going to want homeostasis. And until you get those hormones back online, until you get those neurotransmitters back online, until you shut down hyperinsulinemia, you are fighting an uphill battle. And one of the things that you can't do to get there is you can't speed that process up. You've got to fuel your body until your body knows how to access stored fat for fuel easily. And it's not always in gluconeogenesis from tearing down muscle. And people don't really understand this, and of course I was trained through Mark Sisson. Thank you, God, for Mark Sisson, right? Because I've been trained for him. I think I'm coming up on 10 years. I'm one of the earlier people. And he's been saying this stuff forever. And so has Bitten Johnson. Bitten Johnson has been talking about this is a brain energy problem. This is a metabolic problem. And now we have people like Georgia Ede, who I'm certified through. And we got people like Chris Palmer saying these things. But not only do we have that, we have GLP-1s that show that it accesses the GLP-1 agonist in the brain and shuts down that hunger. So we know it's a brain problem, and we know it's a complex brain problem that's more than just the dopamine reward center. So, it is an incredibly complex problem. The reward center hijacks your thinking too. It hijacks your frontal lobe. So you think, I need something. Have you ever found yourself, just drawn like a magnet to the fridge and you're standing in front of it? You're not even hungry, but you need something. And you feel a sense of relief as soon as you open the door because you're almost already high, right? You're going to get that quick fix relief. And the problem is, you may know the damage, just like Nancy knew that was going to cause you, that you were going to have problems breathing and you might die, but you care more about getting the relief for that reward center. And that goes back to, say, Dr. Anna Lemke, and the whole when the pain goes up, you're going to want to get out of pain. It's not even about getting high anymore. It's about just trying to feel normal. And people don't understand that in order to feel normal, it's going to take time. And I think they need a lot of education about how the brain and the body works so they can release shame. I think knowledge, gives people a lot of freedom to think, oh, that's not my fault. Oh, that's a biochemical response to what's happening to me.
Well, it is complex. And as you're explaining that, I'm so glad you talked about empowerment and helping give people resources, because as you're describing the problem, what a terrible, terrible problem this is. And I can't remember who pointed this out to me. I don't tend to spend lots of times in the aisles of grocery stores. My food tends to be around the outside, and not in the middle of the aisles. But somebody pointed this out to me, and I realized as I walk through the aisles of grocery stores, it's now you see the brands of like candy bars in every aisle. It'll be in ice cream and then cereal, and then it will be like pasta or like instant dinners. And it's like, and it's bright colors and red and screaming at you. And like, oh my goodness, like it would be, it's nearly an impossible problem, nearly impossible.
I once came home and saw a note from my mother-in-law that she left some dog treats for me. And I thought, oh, I'll give Penny a dog treat. And I opened up the treats and it smelled like black licorice. And instantly my reward center and my euphoric recall came online, because the body keeps the score, right? We're going to remember sights, sounds, smells, people, places, events, times of year, whatever, where we ate something, we smelled something, we saw something, and my mouth started watering. And a lot of people think, oh, that makes me a bad person. Why do I still have cravings? That's not a craving. That's a memory. That's an automatic response that I can't control. My mouth is watering and I'm laughing. I'm like, these are flipping dog treats, for crying out loud, And I look on the back of the package, and molasses is one of the ingredients, and blackstrap molasses is a very common ingredient in black licorice. And so my euphoric recall just went into, your mouth is going to water. That doesn't mean you want to eat. It's normal to feel like you want to eat once you get rid of like the biochemical type of response, like what you put in is going to cause you to want to eat, right? But you can't eat just one, the bliss point, all of that stuff, those foods that you mentioned, those shiny colors, and even the sexualization of food, right? So I remember years ago when they came out with the Dove commercial, I was like, is she eating that chocolate or is she flipping having sex with it? Yeah. Right? Because they make it so seductive, and they do that on purpose. And some commercials over the past few years I've noticed have become absolutely blatant, like where they have a family that all of them are obese, including the kids, and they're having McDonald's for breakfast. And a lot of them are targeting communities of color, which I find absolutely abhorrent, because communities of color have more metabolic problems than white people have. And that's just a fact. And that has to do with genetics. I live in a town that is very high in Hispanic, almost 50% Hispanic population. And my father-in-law is a doctor here, and he's diagnosing 5-year-olds with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, Hispanic 5-year-olds. They can have 1 or 2 genes that predispose them to getting fatty liver disease from fructose. And fructose is super dangerous. And so, it's just like the types of sugars have changed that we eat. And the amount of simple carbs that we eat has gone up, obviously, since the ADA came out with their guidelines. And remember, those are from the Department of Agriculture that wants to sell you what they're making, and you can't make things out of meat, right? You can't make a cookie out of meat. And so meat is meat. Fat is, healthy fat is healthy fat. It's not something you can do a lot with, so to speak.
Yeah, well, that's such a good point. Okay, so let's talk about your story. You have suffered through your own addiction. Some of the stories I've heard you tell, especially on the podcast you did with a really good mutual friend, Robert Sykes, on the Keto Savage podcast, was really quite hard to hear, frankly. You've gone through it and recall starting that at a very, very young age. Can you tell us about your own personal story with addiction?
Yeah, sure. So I was actually kicked out of high school in the 9th grade, and my drug of choice was yours. I would use whatever anyone had. if it was going to change the way I felt. I did not care. I didn't care about myself. I didn't care about consequences. I didn't care if I died. And one day I did somebody's drugs, and it was laced with PCP, which is a dissociative drug. And I walked out of my high school classroom, and I walked 2 blocks down to the train tracks, and I laid down, not because of anything, just because my body stopped. I hit a wall, I laid down, and I didn't mean to, but I put my head down on the railroad tracks facing a train that was coming towards me. And this beautiful human being lifted me up off of the tracks. And he could have done anything to me. And I think I'm pretty cute for 58. And you can imagine when I was 14, you know? So he could have done whatever he wanted to me. I would have been at his mercy. I had no defense for myself. I was that disassociated, you know, and he lifted me off of those tracks, and he got me home safely. And he wrote me a poem that I, to this day, still have. I never saw him before, and I've never seen him since. I know his name was Paul Hurteau. And I remember the opening line of the poem was twisting, tumbling, turning. And I think that was exactly kind of where I was at in my life, you know? And so, and I'm, you know, I know you announced that I have 35 years, but that's coming up on March 19th. And this time of year, I start thinking about what my life used to be like and how blessed I am to have found what I like to refer to as we-covery, because I know I alone recover, but I need to do it together with community. And I think that's a missing piece, right? When I talked about I can do anything from my home, I can do anything from my home, but it's not meaningful. It's not connection. It's not intimacy. It's not vulnerability. It's not caring for other people and allowing myself to be cared for. I can't do that for myself. Nobody can. And we have a nutritional deficit in connection. Even when I see families going out, and what do I see? You know, that's what I see. That's what I see. My phone is completely off right now. When I go on date night with my husband, I don't take my phone with me. You know, I don't care what the thing is, because, and I write about this in my book, it's the thing that's got you by the cojones, right? It's the thing you can't stop thinking about. It's the thing that's distracting you from your meaningful purpose. It's the thing that's promising you you're going to feel better for a minute, and it's going to be fun, and it's going to be exciting. It's the thing that promises you can just numb out and forget about all your problems, but they're still there, and they're bigger than ever when they come back. So it doesn't matter if it's scrolling. It doesn't matter. Some things might harm you faster, but trust me, they all do the same damage on the inside. And really, addiction is feeling dead on the inside. It's feeling like you don't have purpose or meaning or value as a human being. So to me, you know, I looked back when I heard Bitten Johnson, and I figured out, oh, hey, you know, Anna, you climbed up to get baby aspirin at 3 years old because you needed something. I needed something. And since then, I've heard about women that ate the whole bottle and had to get their stomach pumped. I've heard 3 women tell me that were 3 years old and ate a whole bottle of Johnson's baby aspirin and had their stomach pumped. And they reached out just to tell me that from hearing me on podcasts. So by the time I was, you know, 18 years old, I had been to my first recovery meeting, a 12-step program where I met my ex-husband, who, by the way, died a little over a year ago, still using. Wow. He was in the hospital last time I saw him, and my daughter had found, you know, opioid pills, you know, wrapped in a little teeny piece of paper inside his cell phone case, right? Inside of his socks. He was hiding them everywhere. He was even dealing them. And he died still dirty, you know, in his early 70s. And in nursing homes, it's a very chronic problem that they're talking about opioid abuse in that age group. because these were the hippies. These were the people who were first introduced to get that quick fix, sex and drugs and rock and roll and whatever. And I'm a product of that because I was raised in San Francisco, born in 1965. So I ended up leaving Nebraska, which I got sent to Nebraska by my mother to go to beauty school in North Platte, Nebraska. And that was a huge culture shock. And I ended up going to California with this guy, not telling anybody where I was going. And I ended up homeless and pregnant in Los Angeles. And I decided when I found out I was pregnant, I wasn't going to smoke. I wasn't going to drink. I wasn't going to do these things that I knew could cause harm to the baby. Now, I do not want anyone out there that is a drug addict that's active or in your past, you used drugs, alcohol, whatever, while you were pregnant. I don't know why I had the power to stop during that time. Except for this, I substituted sugar. And I remember one day needing something so bad that I ate a whole 1-pound bag of powdered sugar mixed with water. And I licked the inside of the plastic bag. And it doesn't even taste good, folks. It's nasty. But my brain needed something. And I knew my ex was out there shooting up dope, and I felt so alone and I felt so afraid and I felt so not right because I didn't understand addiction, right? And I didn't understand addiction as one disease with many outlets. And so I went from outlet to outlet to outlet. And even with 9 years clean from drugs and alcohol, I was still smoking and I would lay on the couch and numb out with food, and do the same exact behaviors. In fact, I would tell my husband, I'm putting you through med school. Because see, I tried to keep the drugs out of the house so I wouldn't eat them. But then I would need them so bad. I would connive him into going and getting me my drugs just the way I did with my ex-husband. So while I felt like, early in my recovery, I thought I was a victim of this man who was 13 years older than me and this and that. No, I wasn't. I was a victim of the disease of addiction, and so was he. I was a victim of addiction.
How were you able to get over that? Like, what steps did you finally take to not only get away from the problem, but even recognize that sugar was the new addiction? I mean, I've heard several drug addicts at this point, former drug addicts, say you put down the spoon and pick up the fork. Like you just kind of, like you said, you kind of replace one addiction for another. How were you able to? I mean, the drugs obviously would be hard enough, but how were you able to understand and realize that sugar is replacing it?
Well, 5 years of hell. So I was also probably, exercised too much, that kind of thing, which now I think, everything's about the dose, right? Sun is about the dose. Play is about the dose. Work is about the dose. All that stuff is about the dose you get. And I was definitely over exercising and doing things like that. And one day I was on my way to Body Pump and I was doing something for charity and I couldn't even make ink come out of the pen, right? And I thought, oh my God, I have rheumatoid arthritis. And I had had symptoms for years. And I had used to be a nurse. And I thought, that's what this is. My feet have been killing me for like 2 years. I've bent over like the letter C in the morning. I can't stand up. I'm tripping over my own feet and falling when I'm really coordinated. Like, I can dance, and so for 3 years, they had me on tons of medication, including prednisone, which of course raises your insulin and makes that addiction worse, right? No matter what you do, you're going to be in fat storage mode when you're on a drug like that. Plus, chemo meds, plus everything else, Plaquenil, immune suppressants, you name it. And for 3 years, and my face got this big like a chipmunk, and I got the fat on my back, and I think I ballooned up to like 180 pounds. And at 5'4" with a ring finger that's a size 4, that's big, And I was miserable. I could barely wipe my own butt. I was getting no relief. And one day I read the book, Celiac, the Hidden Epidemic. And in there it said that if you have one of these things, you should get checked for celiac. And I did, and I had it. And I quit eating gluten, and it was like the Tin Man got oil. I literally could move better within a week, like 50% better. And I was able to taper off of my prednisone. And I'm a natural learner, and I love to read. So that's why I saw the book, because I just happened to be at the library, and they had kind of showcased it. And I thought, well, that's an autoimmune disease, and I already have a whole bunch of those, so may as well read this. And it's like the God thing, right? And I'm a believer, and so I'm not going to negate that. I believe that I can see all the connections in my life, and I believe I'm going to be okay in the future because God has always provided me Paul Hurtos, right at that last minute when I needed them. And so I truly consider myself a hope coach, and I think hope means hold on, pain ends. I don't believe there's a hopeless person in the world, and that if we can just get to your heart, this isn't a message for your brain. This is a message for your heart that it's not over for you yet, even though your brain is telling you a bunch of crap, And so I ended up wondering what else could food do. And I went back to the library, and lo and behold, there's Lauren Cordain's book on paleo. It was very new at the time. So I read it and I'm like, well, I'm not going to eat any damn grains, That seems like a smart plan. If one grain hurts me, why should I, and for a while I did like the pseudo grain thing or whatever. Within a week or two, I found Mark Sisson's Daily Apple. I was like, this cat is like onto something, and my daughter, I had started homeschooling her. So when he did his first iteration of, you could become a coach, and that was with like the very first class, I didn't do it, but I think I was in on the second one.
Wow.
And so, I've been a primal health coach ever since. And so I was, and I was doing his 80-20 rule, but maybe even more like 80-10, because I kind of knew myself. But Christmas would come around and I would find myself binging, and then I would stop eating that stuff and I would binge on, quote unquote, legitimate foods that I could eat. Right. And so I was having this, like, the food mosquito was always there buzzing around my head. And I was always looking up recipes, Whole30 recipes, this recipe. I had every recipe book known to man, and I was still food obsessed, right? So it wasn't until I heard Bitten Johnson that I really understood, like, I want the mental clarity. And a lot of times people think, oh, I don't want to give this up. It'd be so hard. I could never do this. But what's happened for me is I have space now. I didn't need to have a cell phone, Casey, to be distracted. If you were eating something that I thought, oh my God, they're not going to finish that or whatever, I was already distracted. I thought I ordered the wrong thing at the restaurant, or I wished I would have taken more of a helping of this or that. So in my head, I was always distracted by my addiction, no matter what. And so I couldn't be connected as I am today. I didn't have that peace, right? And even after that, other outlets emerged. Like I tried to play Candy Crush, but I can't do that because my brain is thinking, can you just shut up so I can play one more game of Candy Crush? Can I just sneak in one more game? And then I tried, maybe a decorating game won't hurt me, but they have bells and whistles built into those, and they pay millions of dollars to make sure your brain is going to want, they disappoint you, and they know how far to go until they say, okay, give her a reward because we're losing her. Better give her a reward right now. And then you're like, oh, I did it. And it gives you that false sense of having a purpose, but it isn't a meaningful purpose. And your brain and your body and your soul and your spirit know it. Deep down, there's no imitation. There's no imitation for having a quality life that you really want. Today, I have the life. I live a life I love, and I love the life I live. That's like a huge big deal for me. And that's what I want for other people. I don't want them to just get out of the food, right? I want them to get out of the food and get into living their best life right now, right where you're at. Start today, because guess what? Time doesn't care about you. We've spent 33 minutes and 50 seconds together now. Done. I don't get those over.
That's right. Wow, that's so powerful. As you're saying that, I'm thinking of something that I have in my life as a habit. I think of it as a very good habit. I use an app that helps me with language and keeps me up to speed with Portuguese. I'm still fluent in Portuguese, and this app really helps me, and it's great. And I think about the gamification and how it motivates me to stay using the app. And I've had times where I've been in a lesson in the middle of doing this, which again, I would argue is a fine thing, where my wife comes in and she's interrupting a session with something that she wants. And I'm like upset with her, or I'm not patient with her because I'm doing this stupid game. And again, like, it's great to learn a language, but this app knows how to keep me on and keep me doing lessons. at the expense of sometimes not being present with the person I want to be present with the most. So it's really interesting to hear you describe that, and even just simple games, how they can do that to us. It's all just dopamine.
It is. And people don't know how to sit and be still. My favorite Bible verse is be still and know that I am God.
Mm.
Be still and know that, you didn't make yourself.
Yeah.
Be in awe and be in wonder. Just sit there for a minute, contemplate. And so I did a challenge this month, and several of our members are doing it. Just have a 5-minute sit. No nothing, just sit and do nothing. Just be. Just breathe and just let your thoughts roll on by. Not meditation, not anything. No app, no, no phone, no nothing, but just be and
Wow.
learn how to just be still. And I think it's something like we don't teach our kids. They don't know how to just sit. And I think in the cave days, we did a lot of just sitting,
Yeah.
you know. In fact, I mean, when I say we were designed to be lazy, I mean it. We were designed to conserve energy.
That's
We
right.
were supposed to just sit around and dogpile on each other, and, you know, maybe rub each other's neck, or, groom each other, just like, but there was touch, there was oxytocin, there was rest, there was a time for work, there were ceilings to what we did. There were, I'm done. And now we can work all night long. We have lights, we have electricity. I think of like Abe Lincoln, he loved to read, and he would get in trouble for sitting by the fire, trying to read all night. Even if he read the same book over and over again, he didn't care, right? So I think he probably had an addictive personality. That's really a personality that's born of something chemical changed your brain, right? It just doesn't happen by itself. So you have to have the drug. And I think that's something people mistake. They think, oh, I have addiction because I have trauma. And there's a lot of people out there saying that. But the truth is, most people have trauma, not everybody has addiction. So how can that be cause and effect, right? So we know that two people can, for instance, be on the same medication at the same time. Say they both got in the exact same car accident, and they were treated by the same doctor with the same opioids for the same length of time. Both of them go through withdrawal because the substance is addictive. But the one that's an addict is thinking, what's wrong with me? Why can't I be happy? I need something. I need more. And so they start their drug-seeking behavior. This is how come you have housewives becoming heroin addicts, right? And this is how come my my beautiful little cousin Owen died of a drug overdose in a flipping 3-quarter-way house, mind you. He had been helping other young men get clean. And his brain said, one more time, just once more. And that once more killed him with fentanyl, And when I went to his funeral, there was a young man there talking about Owen used to come over to his house. He was about 3 or 4 years older than Owen. Owen was like 3 years old, and he would come over and he would stand in front of the pantry and beg for cookies. And he would beg until the cookies were gone. And he was so cute and charismatic, because addicts will charm you to get what they want, right? They learn how to be pretty seductive and pretty powerful to get what they want. They'll promise you things they'll never deliver on. Women will promise you sex, whatever, to get their fix. I'm not lying, right? This is a fact. And so this woman, his mother, came up with, you know what, Owen, I can't give you any cookies, because those aren't my cookies. Those are some man's cookies, and I'm just keeping them for him. And Owen stood there. This is how the guy put it. He stood there for several minutes, and his brain was going, how am I going to get those I need those cookies. I want those cookies. And he says to her, could you please call so-and-so and see if I could just please have 3 of those cookies? He figured it out. And this is the thing. So your whole brain conspires to keep you in the eat, crave, use, crave loop, right? It conspires to get you a fix. And so right then and there, I knew Owen was just like me. And I promise you, if I did a sugar tool from Bit and Johnson anyone who has any kind of addiction, I promise you I'd find sugar as a gateway drug. I'm almost 100% sure about that.
Wow, that's
And some
crazy.
people say, oh, it's not the sugar. I like savory things. That's sugar.
Yeah. My dad tells a story of me as a kid, and it's Halloween, and I'm looking at an apartment complex, and I'm thinking like, wow, like so many doors. Like, can we go trick or treating here? My dad said, well, these people are all strangers. We don't live here. This is like in the middle of nowhere. And I guess I sat there for a second. And I said, well, maybe I could knock on all the doors and tell them who I am, and then they would know me, and then they would give me candy. Like, there's the little brain trying to figure things out. It's crazy. So how what things have you found to be very helpful to give people that hope that they're seeking for? Because we can say like, yeah, don't have sugar. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
It's always just the next hit. Like you said, it's the next time. And it's just this one time and just this one time. And it's so much easier to just do it this one more time without addressing the problem. So what have you found to be key components of actually true recovery?
I think that people have to feel understood. They have to feel heard and seen. They have to believe that you understand what they're going through. They have to know that you know that they didn't do anything wrong. And I think you have to really de-shame. You have to say things like, this is not your fault. And those of you that are watching this, and you might be watching this, as many of my clients have confessed to doing, while you're eating your drug foods. You so desperately want to stop that you watch podcasts like this, and you're sitting there right now eating your drug foods, which is that I'm not going to apologize for calling them that, because that's what they are. Anything that you can't eat one of, right? And so it's not your fault. This food was designed to hijack your brain that way. You're designed to eat until you're full, period. And if you would have found honey back in the day, you would have eaten that hive up, because you didn't know the next time you were going to have it. But we don't have natural off buttons now to control our behavior. We had an environment that was our control. Now we don't. We don't have that control. And so it's not your fault. And it is the hardest drug to quit because it's ubiquitous. I can't go to the hardware store without drug foods being around me. I can't go into a friend's car. A friend can open their purse and they have drug foods in there, right? Because everybody seems to have something with them in case of emergency, like you're going to die if you're going to expire if you don't eat something every 5 minutes, right? And that's because of your insulin and all of that. It's not your fault. This is a biochemical problem. It's hijacked your brain. It's hijacked your self-worth. That makes you think thoughts that aren't true. You are not a bad person trying to get good. You are a sick person with a disease. Your brain is an organ. That's what I would tell them. It's an organ, and your brain thinks. And it's the most important organ in your body. It's the mastermind of everything that happens in your body. It tells your body what to do. It takes up, it's like 2% of your body weight or 3% of your body weight, and it takes up 20% of the energy you produce from ATP. That's huge. It's an energy hog. And when your brain is low energy because of addiction, and we can see that now, they have studies now with heroin where we can see on MRI that the brain is low energy, right? We can see low energy brain with obesity, with cocaine, with all kinds, including anorexia even now. They're looking at anorexia and showing there's centers of the brain that are low energy. And so this is why eating a ketogenic food plan is going to help you, because ketones cross the blood-brain barrier. They're anti-inflammatory. They're magical. And we were supposed to be able to burn fat for fuel. And that's been hijacked and taken away from you. And you deserve your birthright. You deserve to be able to burn fuel and use fuels efficiently so that your car runs right. You wonder why you're not thinking right. You wonder why this and that, and you can't control your behaviors and this and that. And why can't I just eat one? And you desperately want to be able to eat like you think normal people can eat, but that's not normal. It's just normalized. So to me, it's about getting that fuel source back that's natural to us. Healthy babies are born able to access ketones like that. Human babies are born fat for a reason. If something happened to mom, they'd be able to hang out for a minute, right? And be okay, because their brain is way bigger than 3% of their body weight, right? And so but unhealthy babies are being born all the time, and we're naturally insulin resistant. We're supposed to be at certain times in our life so we can procreate. We become leptin resistant, insulin resistant. Women, when I do their sugars on them, that's Bitten Johnson's, tool, it shows that at puberty, they all of a sudden get, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 symptoms. And that's because they become insulin resistant and they're eating all these foods, right? And they're trying to like get fuel and feel fueled. And it's really hard. Like we're starving to death in an abundance of energy in a lot of ways. And so we need to use fuel that's high quality that we deserve, and switching fuels is hard and it takes time. And I think it takes support. Like I said, I think it's recovery. And it takes people that are really skilled, not just someone saying, if you change the way you eat, I love Sean Baker. I love him. And eating just meat and eating fat, your physical cravings are going to go away, but you're still going to be left with all that wiring. And just like I'm never going to unlearn how to ride a bike because I know how to ride a bike, I'm not going to unlearn that thinking pattern unless somebody skilled is helping me identify those things, right? And the disease of addiction, it morphs. It's going to get creative. It wants an outlet. The caveman wants an outlet. The caveman wants to go and do something. So it's really important to like incorporate fun and pleasant things into your life. It's very important to heal holistically, sustenance, sunshine, stress reduction, good sleep, all of these things are good. They matter. Movement matters. And when I say movement, I don't mean exercise. I mean, you should be able to get up and down off of the damn floor. And trust me, as a woman who has had trouble doing that because of my autoimmunity, you don't want to lose that ability. So you need to make like new fun little goals for you to do. One thing I advise people to do early on is just like get a fishbowl and just put a bunch of fun little things in there. Like for me, it would be like listen to a Casey and the Sunshine Band song and dance around, right? Because that's going to unplug my brain from that obsession and compulsion to harm myself. Addiction is enslavement. And you're going to feel, and I can't even imagine what it was like to really be a slave back in the day, but I have had the pleasure of talking to people because I was a nurse. I talked to a woman who in the early 90s was over 100 years old, and her grandmother was sold in and out of slavery 3 times. And she talked to me about like what that experience was like growing up with this woman. And the woman would say things like, well, my slave owners were nice. Well, that's like saying, well, my addiction wasn't that bad. It just doesn't jive. It doesn't make sense. Like nobody or nothing should own you, right? Someone said to me yesterday, a man from Australia that I was on a discovery call with, he said, in 12 months from now, if he could have anything he wanted, he wouldn't feel that he's owned by food.
Wow.
And thoughts of food.
Wow. Wow, that's so powerful. I've had the privilege in my career now to help people transition onto low carbohydrate or ketogenic or carnivore diets. And, we do start with trying to change the foods, and that's an important step, but it's so much more than that. And that's why we're so grateful that people like you are out there that are certified that can help people through the emotional response. I definitely do feel like starting to focus the diet and shifting it a little bit more towards, the proteins and fats that come together in nature can be really, really helpful. Is that how you kind of steer your diet as well?
I prefer fatty cuts of meat because they don't come without, chicken doesn't come without skin.
Yeah.
And my dad used to say, and he was full-blooded Italian and his parents were off the boat. A pig was a lucky animal. You can eat it snout to tail. And I had to train myself. I'm not going to lie. A lot of people say, oh, the texture of meat, oh, this or that, because we've been socialized as women to eat salad and, light dressings and low fat and all of this stuff. And so we ate SnackWells to our own detriment. I don't know if you're old enough to remember SnackWells.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We had tons in our house.
They're horrible. They're nothing but a sugar bomb, right? And there's zero nutritional value. And I don't think women understand like how eating fat shifts your hormones and how eating protein shifts your muscle and your neurotransmitters to healthy, right? And animal fat is, I think, safer to eat because it's very stable. It isn't going to be like olive oil or other oils that could go rancid. And a rancid oil is poison to your mitochondria, period. And so all of this is really about mitochondrial health, and your mitochondria are visitors, which I find fascinating. And they have way more DNA than any cell in our body. And they're like the batteries of your life. And so do you want to have like the best batteries for life? Then fuel those batteries. Give those batteries what they thrive on. You know, glycation is slow death, and glycation just means you're becoming sugar coated. Every cell in your body is becoming sugar coated. So I actually have younger looking skin now than I had, 13, 14 years ago when I started this lifestyle, right? Just absolutely a huge difference for me, because I'm not glycating my cells. And that's basically folds your proteins funky. That's when someone tells you you have a high hemoglobin A1C, this is what an endocrinologist told me once. It's like dipping those fluffy sugar donuts in sugar. They're perfect. That's how your cell's supposed to be. It's supposed to have exactly the right amount of glucose. We want that. But if you dip it again and it dries out, that gets harder. And you dip it again. Every time your blood sugar goes up, and then your insulin pushes that sugar into storage, that's what's happening to your cells. That's how you lose your eyesight. That's how you get hardened arteries. That's your hemoglobin A1C is a measure of that sugar donut has too much sugar on it. And yet, at the end of this whole thing, this endocrinologist didn't say, so let's tell our, diabetic clients not to eat so much sugar, or to lay off the sugar. Let's not do that. Let's just understand what glycation is and what's causing them to have their leg chopped off or whatever, right?
Well, that's a great description of glycation. I love that. I'll definitely be stealing that to explain it to my clients. When it comes to Christmas time, I end up watching some of my favorite movies that I watch every single year, like Elf and Home Alone, and ones that I grew up with. And one that I always watch. It's a little childish, but I absolutely love it. Is The Muppets Christmas Story. Love the story of Ebenezer Scrooge and Charles Dickens. I have never read the book, but I love the Muppets version of that. I think it's really funny and very cute. Why did you write a book about Ebenezer Scrooge, and what does that have to do with the 12 steps?
Well, the first time that I went back to a 12-step meeting, there was a little part in the book, in the literature that they read, that said that failures are only temporary setbacks, not links in an unbreakable chain. And I heard that, and I heard, it's not your fault, Anna. You're not a failure. You're not a failure. And you're not tied to this way of life. There's hope for you. And I heard, because I'm a reader. I was a reader from the time, I could read when I was 3 years old, like chapter books. Don't ask me how. To this day, numbers elude me, right? I was like wondering what's an X doing with numbers when they got the times tables out. I was like, I don't understand. So I don't have that bone in my head. But I heard this, and I could hear Charles Dickens. I could hear Ebenezer Scrooge, hearing, these are the chains I forged in life. You have a chance and a hope, right? I could hear that. And then I could see the ghost of Christmas past, present, and future. And then as I went through the 12 steps, it was to me like these were the lessons he had to learn, right? He had to learn about himself. And part of the lessons we have to learn, we have to take a good hard look at ourselves. We have to take an inventory. And those ghosts were not easy on Scrooge. One of my favorite ghosts is the ghost of Christmas Present, because he's right here, right now. He gets 1 year on this planet. That's it. Let's go. He comes in with his horn of plenty, but he doesn't ignore what's really going on, right? He has those children under his skirts. He has ignorance, and he has want. And to me, want is that I need something, right? It's not just, it's like we know we need something, but we're looking at the wrong things, and we're not giving people what they really need either. And then ignorance is just like, I don't know, in some ways, I think it's turning a blind eye, because we do that nowadays, right? When my grandfather was little and he was raised in rural Nebraska, a little boy lost both of his parents, and they just moved him in. There was no social services. They just moved him in with them. That's not like how we live today, right? And so the ghost of Christmas present, he would sprinkle people and sprinkle and sprinkle. And Ebenezer Scrooge says to him, why are you sprinkling them? Like as if they didn't kind of deserve, you had to deserve sprinkles. And his answer was, they need it most of all, right? And so to me, it's like the whole ghost of Christmas present was teaching me the only reason we look down on someone is to help lift them up. There is no other reason in the world to look down on another human being. You don't know their story. You don't know what they've been through. You have zero ideas. When you think that 1 in 3 women are molested by someone they know and people trusted and loved in their life, that's ridiculous, right? We've got child sex trafficking. We have all kinds of things going on. We have zero idea what people are going through or what their story is. So that's kind of like, to me, like the ghost of Christmas present really pulled the sheets on Scrooge. He said, is there something we could do about Tiny Tim? And he said, why not, be done with the surplus population? He uses Scrooge's own words against him and says, well, aren't you the guy that said this? What do you care? And so I think you have to really look at yourself. What do you really care about? What really matters? Because addiction stops you from mattering and making other people matter. And that's real connection, right? That is what makes life worth living. It really does. And so to me, like when I see people doing addictive behavior, manipulative behavior, they're trying to get what they want, regardless of how their kids feel about it, whatever. And I see this all the time because I sponsor a lot of women. They might spend money from their future that they're borrowing money from their future to get their pretty shiny thing. They deserve this treat, that treat, whatever, but their kids, they don't have enough money saved up and they're a single parent in case something happens and they can't pay the rent. So to me, that's like part of that selfish behavior. For me, I don't know how long I've had this jacket, this shirt. I cut my own hair and I'm married to a cardiologist, but I don't feel this need like to just get stuff to have stuff, or I don't. I want experiences. I want connection. I want intimacy. So I'm more likely to pay for like personal coaching or being a part of a mastermind where I get to exchange ideas and watch people grow and have people challenge me. That's how I get my meaningful purpose. And that's what we do in SUGARx Global. We try to like push people outside of like, here's your comfort zone. And Brendan Burchard talks about this all the time. And every comfort zone isn't bad. It's not bad at all. What's really bad is caged. And caged is where people live when they're in addiction and they're afraid, I can't come out, I'm caged. But we keep ourselves in the cage. We may feel someone else put us there because we had some horrible thing happen in our past or whatever, or we failed so many times. And that's where I was when I heard that about the chains, right? I was caged. And within 4 days, I was making a decision to divorce my ex-husband. We had 4 days clean together, and they were the best days of our marriage. And then he sold my car and shot dope all night. And I remember I went to those Fezziwigs, I call them, right? In my book, I call them Fezziwigs because Fezziwig knew how to be gracious and throw a party. And everyone was welcome at Fezziwig's party. See, there's room for everyone in every walk of life. To me, that's how I feel. That's what I've been taught. And they said to me, Anna, what lengths are you willing to go to stay clean today? They didn't tell me what to do. They asked me, and I knew I had to divorce my ex-husband if I was going to be okay, if my kids were going to be okay. I had 2 kids and I was 23. I'd never written a check, paid a bill. I didn't know what a bill looked like. I thought he was doing it. I outsourced my own responsibility, my ability to respond. Hear what I'm saying? Because I wanted the false sense of security. Everything was taken care of and I could just numb out, right? And check out. I was caged. So I had to start asking for help, and I did. And other Fezziwigs were there. I went to the bank, I opened up a checking account, and I humbled myself and I said, I've never written a check in my life, and this is my first checking account. And the lady said, let me help you. And she sat down with me and she showed me even what the memo line was for, you know. And it turns out she graduated high school with my mom, and I didn't know that.
Wow. Wow.
But, you know, and then other things happened, like I got really sick and I couldn't afford a doctor. And my neighbor told me to go to this doctor, and this was another lesson. And I would call him a fezziwig too. She told me I'd be able to pay later, and my kids were really sick. And I remember he put his hands on my knees at the end of the appointment, and he said, how are you doing financially? And I started crying, and I said, not well. My friend said I could pay you later. And he said no. And I thought he meant no, like he needed his money right away. So now I'm really sobbing because I feel shame, right? And he said, I'm not taking a dime from you. And he said, I'm just sprinkling some of the bread back on the water that's been so freely given to me, you know? And I think the highest human function is to be someone that intervenes on the behalf of mankind, as Charles Dickens would put on it. It would, you know, would say, you can't receive anything. You cannot receive anything like it is to be a giver. And that man told me, every time you go by a Salvation Army bucket, if you would just remember me and throw a little something in there, do you know, I will go and get money. My husband knows this. I will dig it out of my car. I will find an ATM. I will go back to that damn Salvation Army bucket. I have never seen that man again. He was old as dirt when I met him. But that's the impact, right? One little ripple. You do something kind and something good for someone else. And I know a lot of you are desperate for your loved ones to change. Maybe you're dealing with horrible addiction. I'm going to tell you what, you cannot beat a message into them, but you can love a message into them. And it's okay to love an addict, no matter how bad they are. Because I know some of you are dealing with super hard alcoholism and drug addiction that really has a huge impact, but so does food. Food and mood go hand in hand. And I know rageaholics because of the food. But I'm telling you, it's okay to love them, but don't support their addiction. And you can learn how to do that. And I do want to say, Casey, that anybody that wants to get on a call with us, you know, I'll send you a link and they can get on a 15-minute call. We don't try to sell anybody anything. We don't want people in our community that aren't meant to be there, because our community is, it's for addicts. It's not for harmful users. It's not for looky-loos, and you'll be miserable if you're not an addict.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I don't know how we're going to top that. So let's make sure we tag that in the show notes. What an amazing and inspiring conversation this has been, Anna. Where would you like people to go to find you, connect with you in your work, and take you up on your offer to do a call with people?
Well, if you want to buy my book, it's on Amazon. Right now, I'm giving all the money to children's programs here in my local community, because addicts, there's so much shame and guilt, and children feel ashamed that their parents are addicts. And that really hurts me. When you know a child has been taken away from their family because there's active addiction in the family, do whatever you can to de-shame that kid. They love their parents, and it's okay to love their parents. Their parents love them to the best of their ability. They have a disease. Addiction is a disease, not a decision. You can get my book on Amazon. And if you like it, please leave a review, because it really does help. And you can reach out to me. I'm on Instagram. I don't really post a lot. And I'm kind of like, I just do me on Instagram. I repost a lot of stuff that speaks to me. And I'm known to dance once in a while, because I feel like that's my way of giving sprinkles, if some funky old lady can get up and
I love it.
a move or whatever, so, and then SUGARxGlobal.com. But I have people reach out to me on back channels on Facebook, even coaches. How do I help this person? Or how do I even get started as a coach? Because, when I was just even doing my regular coaching, I was really successful at it. And I think it's because you can't just give people information. You have to give them the vision of their future self. And I'm telling you what, addicts are amazing people who get to be phenomenal. They become so grateful that I think they become some of the best high-performing people in the world. Like, I wouldn't have imagined, here I am, 58 years old, a high school dropout, and I'm in a cohort of 40 people that are trying to get a consensus on sugar addiction so it can get in the ICD. And in my group, I had Nicole Avena and two endocrinologists, and then me, And so the thing is, like, it's not where you are or where you've been that matters. It's where you can go. And I want to get you past that, beyond today. Like, get out of the cage. Let's get you some comfort, and then let's stretch that comfort zone, and let's get into, really into that powerful life where you're like saying, let's go. I'm ready to do one more thing. I want to try something new. That's where you're going to get your meaningful connection. I'm ready to meet some new people. I'm ready to be a little bit more vulnerable. And that's where you're going to be like, oh, and does it hurt sometimes? Yes, of course, but it doesn't hurt like active addiction. I promise you. Taking risks is going to cost you, and you're going to make mistakes. So what? It's worth it. If you keep up on it, it's worth it.
I love that. What an amazing message. This has been such an awesome conversation. Anna Fruehling, thank you so very much for your own journey and for paying it back and giving back to the community and helping other people out. I think it's an absolutely wonderful message. And we're so grateful for you and for taking the time to be on our show today. We really, really appreciate you.
Thank you, Casey.
And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.